Since the beginning of this universe, you know the world is fading. There's a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it. There are voices in your head saying that you're a failure. You're not good enough, but you know that's not true. There is a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it, 'cause you're the one.
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Google's at it again, and we have the man on to talk us through what's going on. Greetings, bibliothecaries. Yes, that's a word. It means librarians. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I will be Patrick Smith, and our guest today is the founder and CEO of LBRY, the absolute, hands down, without question, best alternative to YouTube in existence today. There really is no competition in the competition for YouTube competitors, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Welcome to the show, sir. It's good to have you.
It's great to be here with you, Patrick. And yeah, our chief marketing officer, Google, is doing a great job advertising the library.
Yes, he is. And before we get into that, I just want to kind of like get an update on the situation at the company. So just leading up to this, guys, there's a link in the description to the interview that I did with Jeremy here almost a year ago, well, back in February at Anarchapulco, where we did a short dive into the particulars of the platform. If you're looking to find out what LBRY is and how it works and the depth of their commitment to anti-censorship and freedom of speech and freedom in content, then go check out the link to that interview below. I really grilled him on that commitment to free speech, and I gotta say, he passed with flying colors. He's only one of two platforms that have ever passed one of my anti-censorship grillings with flying colors, and the other one is Float, which we are also live streaming to right now on the social network, so you can watch us there or on YouTube, which is going to be the subject of the show today. So how are things going at LBRY, aside from the banning, which I guess we'll get into next, but like, how's it going over there?
Really well. Usage has been up substantially. More creators are coming on week after week after week. I mean, we have 30,000 creators who have left YouTube, with, I think we're approaching 100 with 1 million or more subscribers on YouTube, plus a lot of great independent channels that are growing really fast and creating some really great content. And we actually very recently launched Odyssey.com, which is intended to be even more explicitly a direct competitor with YouTube, because that's actually never, we kind of, with LBRY, we kind of fell into being a competitor to YouTube. And LBRY was intended to be this piece of technology, this protocol that's intended to be a core part of the way that the internet itself works. And it turned out people were really upset about YouTube, and I'm a pragmatist, so.
So how's the technology holding up to, I guess, the increase in traffic over time, the massive numbers of videos that I'm seeing uploaded now? Because I could tell just as a viewer that you guys are getting way more content than you were a year and a half ago when I first signed up and started moving my channel's content over. How's the tech holding up?
It's been holding up really well. And you can look at, just look at the content that's available on Odyssey.com, and you'll see some really compelling, interesting stuff. And it is a lot of the independent kind of content creator that made YouTube great. YouTube is kind of becoming a cable company now, and I think the creators who are independent and who are up and coming and are doing interesting things are realizing that YouTube isn't the place for them anymore.
Couldn't have said it better. How are the larger creators liking it that have moved over? I know that you have some partnerships with some pretty big names with some pretty big subscriber counts. How are they enjoying it, and how are the rewards functioning for them, and like how well are they functioning?
Yeah, well, so one interesting thing we've been seeing, so Odyssey launched only 8 days ago, 10 days ago. There's features on Odyssey that LBRY didn't have because there are things that can be difficult to do decentralized that are much easier to do centralized. So an example of this is just like and dislike counts, right? If you make likes and dislikes blockchain transactions, that causes both scaling issues and user experience issues. People don't want to spend money to click a like button, right? And blockchain transactions fundamentally, as we see with Ethereum and Bitcoin and all these things, they have to cost at least a little bit of something. And people don't want to pay for likes. Now, we'd like to figure out a way to do decentralized likes eventually, and there may be some sort of cutting edge ways that you can do it, but you can do centralized likes really quickly. Right. And so one of the reasons we've launched Odyssey is it lets us do some of these things a little bit differently. You're still building up a cryptocurrency wallet. You can take that cryptocurrency wallet, you can walk away from the platform and have this level of control that's completely unparalleled to any other system. But we want LBRY, the technology, to be this kind of pure, decentralized, uncensorable thing. And Odyssey is not exactly that. But the user experience on Odyssey is really, really awesome. If you are still watching this on YouTube, I think Odyssey really offers an experience that's comparable or really better when you factor in the policies.
I feel a little dumb that I have not heard of Odyssey, seeing as how I use LBRY every single day. I know nothing about it. Can you introduce me to it? We're having some questions in the comments as well. What is Odyssey? Where can I find that?
Yeah. So this is intended to be like our mainstream sort of premier video product. This is you were asking. I know you said some of the things you wanted to talk about. I think you wanted to get to this later, but it's really related to this blog post that we put out that you were asking about, sort of this next iteration of what we're building. I mean, LBRY is designed to be a protocol, right? It's not designed to be this sort of open application, sort of open general application platform, the way that Ethereum claims to be, where they're saying, every app in the world will run on it. But LBRY is designed to be an application protocol where you're going to want different apps that do different things. On top of everything on LBRY is going to be around the idea of digital content, publisher identity, payments around digital content, and that kind of thing. But your app for reading the news isn't your app for watching compelling videos, isn't your app necessarily even for watching movies, isn't your app for ebooks or whatever, And so that's what that post was sort of starting to lay out, is that we want LBRY, the LBRY brand and the LBRY name to be just the core tech, and the different apps and experiences that people might have in interacting with that tech aren't going to necessarily be called LBRY. And so rather than LBRY being a YouTube alternative, we're making Odyssey the YouTube alternative. So if you want an alternative to YouTube that has better policy, that's free speech oriented, that's based on open technology, go use Odyssey. Right? How does Odyssey do that? It does that with the LBRY technology. But you don't need to know about that. We want a thing where you don't need to know about LBRY. Right? If you use Odyssey, it doesn't actually put the cryptocurrency is just it's like a gem on Twitch. It's just a little icon. Right? It's not in your face. Odyssey is basically taking the attitude that when you have to learn about cryptocurrency, we've failed a little bit. We want it to just work. That's not exactly the right way of putting it, but you get what I mean. Yeah.
So do I still upload to LBRY the way I used to, or is Odyssey a?
Yeah, they're all the same. So if you upload via Odyssey, if you upload via LBRY, if you upload via the desktop app, if you upload from your cell phone, they're all the same network. Right? Odyssey is like an app on top of that underlying network. LBRY is this network underneath that allows you to put out content, allow other people to consume it, allow payments for it, allow various other attributions and things that can happen, sharing and so on. But any number of apps can interact with that and pull information from that network. And Odyssey is just it's effectively a new LBRY. If you're used to that D app way of thinking, Odyssey is a new D app that on top of LBRY.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm definitely going to have to dive into that immediately after this interview and maybe have you back on later to talk about it. But the terrible and, great PR news for you, I guess, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about what Google has done to the best alternative to YouTube?
So they blocked our Android app, which is still called LBRY Android. There probably will be an Odyssey app in the near future. But LBRY Android has been suspended from the Play Store, and they suspended it for this video that's a comedy sketch. It's this comedy sketch about a couple going for like the Guinness Book of World Records of sex. But there's no nudity. There's no pornography. It's a comedy. It's not intended to be, sexually arousing. It's like a well done. It's done by a Hollywood writer. She wrote for NCIS, Lawrence of LA. And they suspended us for it. They said because this content is available. Now, of course, you can watch, sexy twerking videos on YouTube or literal hardcore pornography on Twitter or the Reddit apps. So it seems like quite a bit of a double standard. And while they've said that they're going to let our app back in, they've doubled down that this video is not okay. And I tend to not be that conspiratorial, but I know they're aware of how many creators have been coming onto our platform. And so it does make me wonder, a little bit if they're just trying to find something to get us for, because it's completely ridiculous. It's complete double standard, completely hypocritical. And it's so cold and like bureaucratic the way they interact with you. We have hundreds of thousands of downloads. We have lots of happy users, and it's just like it comes out of nowhere with no warning. You fill out forms. It's everything about big tech that is awful.
Everything. Yes, absolutely. The greatest extent of any communication I've ever had with any problem with YouTube is a form letter that doesn't in any way address anything that had anything to do with my problem. It's totally unhelpful. There's a guy named David Stewart who I hope to have on this show soon, but he made a point about these large tech companies, especially social networks and YouTube and these type of media content hosting platforms, that I think is very applicable in this situation. It was applicable when I just got recently permanently banned, deleted from Facebook for memes. And it relates to this as well. And the point was that their terms of service is nothing but a red herring. It's a way to get you to sort of self-police for them because they don't have the resources or personnel to actually watch everything that all of their users are doing. They're too big for that. So they put out a terms of service, they put out community guidelines, content guidelines, and most people self-police for them. But that has nothing to do with getting banned or deleted. They will come for you based on who you are and what you represent. The rules are a red herring. The rules are a distraction. It's about who you are and what you represent. And to me, LBRY is everything that the world needs, and that's what it represents right now. And that, like you were saying, I think that's why they're coming for you.
Yeah, I mean, the rules are written so broadly that like YouTube itself is clearly not a legal app, right? And we, by the way, just to if you're curious, is this guy exaggerating? We have the exact images. We posted the exact image that they are saying is that they cited as like not allowed. We posted the link to the video so you can watch it in context, and we've posted some images from other apps that are allowed. I mean, it's a complete and utter double standard. I completely agree with you. The rules exist so that they can apply them when they want to, not so that they can be any kind of abstract and equally applied standard.
Yeah. So what's the plan? I mean, aside from garnering all the PR, what's the plan? What can you do? What do you even want to do? I'm curious.
So I don't want to talk too much about next steps. Should they not let us back in? Because I very much think they will let us back in. I think it would be a very poor business choice on their end not to let us back in. This is part of why whether how much they're doing it on purpose or not, it can also just be, these places are full of bureaucrats at this point, right? Like this is not the best and brightest. This is someone that they're trying to pay, a cheap amount of money to do content moderation, and they're not necessarily the best at seeing the context, this is like clearly a comedy, and so on. And, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens, and we'll also see if it continues to happen, right? Because it could be that if it happens again, and they're trying to build up this background of this app continues to break the rules, so we're going to actually ban them. Right? That's what they did with with Gab as an example, or other places like that, where they want to produce this log of saying they've continued to break the rules and they haven't gotten better, and that's why we're now going to ban them. If it happens again, that'll really start. Then I'll be much more convinced. Right now, I'm thinking it's possible, it's intentional, it's possible, it's not.
Fair enough. Yeah, never assume malice, I guess, is a good rule of thumb.
Sometimes no. Sometimes it's malice.
It's really hard though with these particular actors.
Yeah.
So you have sort of appealed the decision. You are trying to get back into the App Store, and I guess we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and we had record traffic last week, including that. I don't know if this was a record number of new installs, but it was a very high number of new Android installs yesterday, higher than like the Thursday when we were in the App Store. We had more yesterday outside of the App Store than Thursday when we were in the App Store. So this is so far, basically only been a positive for us. I mean, it's so capricious, and I think these kinds of incidents, wake up more and more people to how bad big tech can be. And I expect certainly up through, I mean, not that they're going to get better after the election, but they're going to be at their worst through the election, I think.
This is maybe tangential, and it's fine if you haven't thought about it. But as a CEO of a tech company, what kind of plan, what kind of strategy do you have for fostering a work environment where this type of thing doesn't happen? Is it about politics? How do you prevent your environment from being about politics? Once you are the size of YouTube, because we know LBRY is going to continue to be successful, how do you prevent your 3-tiered middle management from having 5 tiers of middle managers that mess everything up? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I have some thoughts, although I'm not going to claim that I have all of the answers. I haven't run 1,000-person company, right? I've run a 20-person company, and I guess I've run like 1,000-person communities, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. You're not really running it, But I'd say actually there are lessons from that, and in both cases, I'd give the answer that it's about culture, right? Culture is, you need to select for culture, and you need to develop your culture, and you need to make sure that that you have ways of your culture being enforced and spreading. There's that sort of, this is I think this is a channel where I can talk this way. That sort of like that Hayekian idea of like local knowledge and like planning and so on, and like you can't, as you get removed from something, you can't actually understand it. It's the same thing when you're running a company, right? So the way that companies resolve this is they resolve it through culture, right? I want to have people who I trust to think to think and act in a certain way, in a responsible way, in a thoughtful way, in an intelligent way, right? And I have to have a culture that selects for those kinds of people. I think Google used to be a place that selected for that kind of thing. I think it has begun to get sort of hollowed out by people who aren't that way. And I don't know, it's a problem I want to have, to not let my multiple 1,000-person company fall prey to these problems. But I don't know that it's a solved one. I think this is kind of how big companies end up failing, is they grow too big and they lose the mechanisms that made them great, and they're no longer able to maintain themselves. And then really talented people don't want to go and work there, but they still have the name that's sort of like, so then it gets hollowed out by sort of like incompetent people or sociopaths or other kinds of things. And I do think that pattern repeats itself, and it's part of why you don't have companies last for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's sort of like how they wondered how the dinosaurs, when they grew so large, how their hearts could pump the blood all the way up to the brain, and like a brontosaurus. It's same thing for these mega huge companies. It's like somewhere in between, they just grow so heavy that they're sort of held up by grifters and toothpicks.
Yeah. It's strange. I mean, right? Because how else could there are 14 people working full time on this project. Now there are dozens of others who contribute, and so it's not, I don't want to in any way say that it's just those. There's a ton of people who contribute, but nonetheless, it's like, I feel like we're like, I'm not trying to say like coast because we're working really hard, but like it's crazy because I feel like we're like outmaneuvering this company that's like way, way, way larger than us. So it's kind of wild.
Yeah, they have the resources to probably, make 30 libraries in the next month, if they split it up and knew how to manage themselves properly, right? But
yeah, well, I think that's true. Although I think that's a key dynamic that if you want to take on a giant, that you have to have is this, that you can't, because they could wake up, right? As they will, so as we sort of draw more blood, they'll become even the sleeping giant eventually, wakes up when enough blood has been drawn. But why are we the vampire? I should have had this metaphor, better planned out. But anyway, they will wake up. And so when they wake up, the question is, can they co-opt you? Can they simply copy what you do? This is part of the reason that third party political parties have a problem, is that, right, the big party eventually wakes up and they co-opt. And it can happen with disruptive technologies. I would give an example. This is a nerdy example, but like PHP was a programming language that was kind of crapped on for a long time, but they had such market share that they eventually woke up and they kind of fixed a lot of it and were able to live on. They got attacked, but because they were able to, they woke up and they changed things. And so the incumbent has a lot of time to fix things. So you want to have some property that like the incumbent can't just sort of co-opt or take on. And so in our case, one of the fundamental propositions of what we've built is we have surrendered control. And it's not just like YouTube could claw back a little bit by simply adopting better policies, but to fundamentally surrender the control, I think is something that they will basically never be willing to do, or wouldn't do until it's too late.
Yeah, the censorship. They have allowed their company to become too full of activists that, if they ever tried to loosen their censorious rules, that they would probably get eaten out from the inside out. Like they have too many internal problems for that. Too much internal politics.
Yeah, Damore getting driven out, I think, was a signal to the kinds of people that I'm talking about that actually make a company great. Like, and you can disagree with him, but like great people don't have a problem having that discussion. They don't, right? Because people who are really good at what they do, want to find the truth, and they're like always willing to examine things, and they're like relentless about chasing after it. Like, and that they're just the opposite kinds of people who are interested in kind of like maintaining narratives. So, there are people who could disagree with that. So I'm not saying he's necessarily correct or whatever. I haven't even read it, but like to have a problem with like the discussion being had is never, that's very rare that there are people that are exceptionally talented that would be against that discussion happening.
Interesting. Okay. Well, okay, so now I want to challenge you, and I'm going to get this totally wrong, because it's been like a month and a half or so since I got an email from LBRY talking about a change in how they were going to, communicate, see, I'm already getting it terribly wrong. So my impression that is left over in my brain from a month and a half ago, and this could be totally my fault, so I've put enough caveats on it at this point, was that LBRY was going to try and moderate its public stances on censorship. And there's a lot of question marks in here because I know I'm getting this wrong. And there was something about allowing for other countries that have like censorious laws in place to sort of restrict content on the LBRY network. Is anything I just said accurate?
It is true that we made a post.
Fair enough. Okay.
Look, I think that the perception that you had is not inaccurate in the sense that like other people kind of ended up with that perception. I think that was substantially our fault in terms of how we communicated some of that. What we were trying to do was set up things like the Odyssey announcement, and there's more coming, where like we want LBRY to move to the background a little bit, right? LBRY, for people who really care about the tech and care about the idea and decentralization and open source, right? You're still going to care about LBRY. For people who just want a YouTube with better policy, that like, what's a blockchain, right? So that's like what Odyssey is going to do. Odyssey is also intended to support advertisers. So if there was if there could potentially be times where we side with advertisers over certain types of content on Odyssey specifically, right? Now remember, these are apps on top of the network. The unfiltered experience is still there. We're never actually deleting anyone. We're never actually banning anyone. People can always have an experience where they can get everything, right? So that never goes away. And it's our intent always to continue to provide that.
Okay. I don't know why I had this total black hole in my memory about Odyssey. I apologize. Go ahead.
The country thing, the country thing does relate to this, where we will be willing to, look, if the question is like run a domain for Turkey that's Turkey compliant, versus not being Turkey, like we are open to running the Turkey domain. We're actually even looking at, setting up even different entities, because it continues to increase the diversity of the, of the network, right? The people who start on the Turkish domain can still later graduate to a more unfiltered experience after they learn more. Like, it's better to have that there than to not have it there at all. Because remember that, and this can be tough to get your head around, LBRY isn't one thing. So when we're saying that, like, we're going to set up additional experiences that might be more compromising, there's still always that level of everything, right? That's always there, and that's never going to go away. I care a lot about that. I also am interested in building a company that is quite successful and quite large, and having LBRY, reach into fully into the mainstream, right? So.
Okay, so Odyssey is going to be advertiser supported potentially, so that's new. That's really cool and new information. And that does come with more content restrictions, necessarily as demanded by the people wanting to advertise. That's also understandable, right?
Yeah. Odyssey is the explicit YouTube competitor. LBRY is a blockchain technology, blockchain digital content technology.
So the the additional restrictions on Odyssey will be only based on advertiser demands? We're
going to be pragmatic. I would like to be as inclusive as possible. I think that is the pragmatic choice. Like, I'm not trying to copy the policies of YouTube. I'm definitely not. If there were content that were, I don't know. We're gonna judge these as they come up. The stance for LBRY, clients was always like that. The only thing that goes on the blacklist is if it's literally illegal in the United States, and clients can change their blacklist and use a different provider if they want to. So that was the stance that LBRY has taken thus far. Where we'll end up settling with Odyssey is like a little bit unclear, but my intent is to be very, very inclusive in what's allowed.
Okay. As well as creating custom endpoints for more censorious, like the North Korea Odyssey might have like 2 videos left on it or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you're doing that. Here's just a layman question. Why would you help countries censor content?
Well, as I was saying, I mean, to me, it's I don't. Some people get mad at like Google for operating in China, and like, if I'm being honest, like, I don't. Like, the option is like to do business there or to not do it. So it's like, when I would be very resistant to it affecting like the American experiences or things like that. But in terms of like my personal ethics, like, I don't think it's my job to like really tell how other countries they should be running things or doing their business. Like, even if I disagree, I mean, if my technology was like literally being directly used in like substantial harm, like I would have a problem with that. But if we're talking about like that country has a different policy for what's allowed on its tube sites, like it doesn't feel immoral to me to follow that country's laws to be.
I wasn't trying to make the case that it was immoral. I was just kind of curious where you're.
Kinds of discussions. I do too. I mean, there are a lot of challenging. Like, I don't want to be immoral with this company, and I'm like, I think we have very similar ethics.
Yes.
And it is something that I think about, right? So I am in. Feel free to push back. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, what if the America made a law that illegalized some kind of content that was not really harmful or insane or whatever? What What if there was a?
Well, if it's America, I have to follow. I mean, right? Like, I'm an American citizen. We're an American company, so I have to follow. Like, I'm not going to go to jail, so I'm going to follow American law.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. I'm just bouncing back and forth between, okay.
Yeah, I think the more challenging one is like, basically you've got countries like that are basically run by autocrats, who are saying, hey, no content's allowed that criticizes me, or things like that, where it's like, are you going to compromise, to make it available? I mean, and I think and again, I already basically gave this answer. My answer is yes. They end up, it ends up bringing. People can get from there to the other experience, like that peer-to-peer desktop one will always be there. So you're going to wake up more people to the idea, and it's not like someone else isn't going to provide. It's not like someone else is going to provide the service. So like you're actually getting more people to a better place providing it than not providing it.
I can see that because you could release a bunch of videos on the North Korea Odyssey telling them how to get past the firewall to get to the American Odyssey, and achieve freedom or something like that. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the interview and the update. And I mean, I guess if there's any other big developments, you'll definitely have an open invitation to come back to tell us more. Is there anything else that you'd like to sort of announce to the world or talk about?
No, if you're just learning about all this today, go to Odysee.com, create an account, and follow Disenthrall is your handle?
This is Anarchast, but we also have a Disenthrall channel. Yeah. It's fine. It's all good. It's spelled differently, though, right? It's not normal Odyssey spelling. How is it?
ODYSEE.com.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
ODYSEE.
And now that I know that's the thing, I'll put a link to it in the description if you want, and we'll send people that direction. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out in the comments. It was a really good show, and good luck in your fight against the beast that is Google. The don't be evil beast that is a very evil. Anyway, we'll talk later. All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
All right.
Are we off? Yeah.